you've had the chance to be an intellectual property lawyer representing small companies and big companies and managing their portfolio. What would you say are differences between managing a bigger portfolio versus handling a mark or two?
Well, the biggest difference is just the mere size and approaching a large portfolio with a strategy. Because maintaining a large portfolio can be very expensive and very time intensive. And so one has to approach it fairly strategically. Whereas if you're just dealing with your first few marks, you're developing your portfolio, obviously, strategy is still involved in terms of choosing what are the first and most important marks to become part of your portfolio, but you're not yet at the point where you're juggling, hundreds or tens and 20s of trademarks and different countries.
So how do you set that strategy?
Well, really, it's sitting down and taking a look at what the marks are. So, for example, I went back and took a look at a strategy that I developed several years ago for a very large client. And one of the first things we did was take a look at all of the various trademarks, and this happened to be a retailer, and divided those marks into core marks, more like the very core private label marks, house marks, sort of the overall mark that represented the entire company and the store brand, and then also what we would call fashion or fast marks that were going to come in and maybe be used for a short period of time. Maybe it was a slogan, or maybe it was a product that was going to be, a trend in and then off the market, but not going to be a mainstay, and divided those marks that way. And then also took a look at the countries. What countries are you selling in? What countries do you have important competitors? What countries are you manufacturing in? And what are your expansion countries of interest? And then looking at all of that, developing a strategy for both clearing the trademarks and then registering the trademarks, if one decides to register at all.
So if we compare the mainstay marks to the ones that are more transient, you'd obviously put more into the filing and prosecution of the marks that are going to be less, more permanent and less transient.
Right. So you're going to start with your house marks, I guess, would be the top level, right? And then so comparing to the smaller company startup situation, those are going to be your first marks, right? But so if you've already developed and you've got a very large portfolio of marks, still those house marks are going to be your most important. And so obviously the name of the store or the primary name, the primary house brand, you're going to protect that. You're always going to register it. You're always going to maintain it. And you're going to do that in most of the countries, if not all of your countries of interest, certainly where you are actually selling. And then after that, there are what I would call, for this particular client, core marks, which were their core brands. They sold several different brands under their house mark. And so what are those core brands? Whether they could be private label or wholly owned marks, and make a decision from there. Again, core marks are probably going to be protected with almost as much strength as the house mark. Where the decision comes into play as to whether or not to register or not to register is where you have marks that are more like the fashion marks, the trend marks. So if the advertisers want to use a particular slogan, but they're only going to use it for that holiday season, well, certainly it makes sense to clear that slogan and clear that mark to make sure that it's available for use. But you're not going to engage in a worldwide registration filing program, because by the time you even get assigned to an examiner in most instances, you're going to cease using the mark. So that's not a good place to spend your money.